Today I'd like to tell you about Solomon. Solomon was a great king. He was one of the sons of Bathsheba. He was a son of David, and he was remarkable like his father. He ruled with God, and God ruled with him. Early in his reign, God asked Solomon what Solomon wanted, what God should give him. And this is what Solomon said. He said he wanted wisdom and knowledge. Now, I don't know if God was surprised, but God commended him for not asking for the usual things, for wealth and possessions, for honor, or the death of his enemies, or long life for himself. And so what God ended up giving Solomon was wisdom and knowledge. God gave him also wealth and possessions and honor and long life. And so I'd like to share with you an example of Solomon's wonderful and great wisdom. Kings were sometimes asked to provide judgment in disputes, and in one particular instance, there were two women who came to him. They lived in the same house. Now, the first woman gave birth to a baby boy. And you have to remember that in this time, for a boy to be born, it meant that this woman had a future, had hope, that there would be someone to take care of her as she got older. Now, 3 days later, that other woman who lived with her also gave birth to a baby boy. But that first night, as they lay sleeping, she smothered her child, and he died. Realizing this in the middle of the night, the woman got up and quietly swapped the babies. Now, this woman, she obviously denied this. They argued back and forth. He's mine. No, he's mine. He's my child. No, he's my child. I gave birth to him. Well, Solomon put an end to this, and he called for someone to bring a sword. And he said, okay, I'll tell you what, here's my judgment. We'll divide him in half, and you can each have half of the baby boy. Now, one of the women was horrified. No, please don't do that. Give him to the other woman. Don't kill him. Solomon, in his wisdom, knew then exactly who the mother was. The mother was the one who had compassion, who didn't want that child to be killed. And he gave the baby back to her. Solomon's wisdom was known throughout the land. People would come to him near and far to hear his judgments, to hear his perspectives. But Solomon was also really well known for one other thing, and that was the building of the first temple. He commissioned the temple in the 4th year of his reign. It was almost 500 years after the Exodus. And with God's direction, he decided that it would be built on Mount Moriah in Jerusalem. And Solomon, he employed 70,000 laborers, 80,000 stonecutters, and 3,600 folks to direct them and shape this new temple. Now, when the temple was finally done, it was 90 feet long, 30 feet wide, and 180 feet tall. Massive pillars on the outside. And Solomon lined the entire inside of this temple with gold. And he placed lampstands inside of it. And when those lamps were lit, those walls glowed as if heaven was breaking in this heavenly glow. Just this whole space was just filled with light. Inside the temple are also these ginormous cherubim, 18 feet tall. Cherubim are these winged heavenly creatures, and they held out one wing this way and one wing up, and their wings came together and created a throne for God. Outside of the temple was a bronze altar that was 30 feet by 30 feet. And there was a bronze basin for ritual washing that was 15 feet by 15 feet. And this basin, this huge basin, rested on 12 bronze oxen. And then they placed the Ark of the Covenant inside, the special holy things that contain not just commandments, but the promise of God. And so in the center of the land was this place where people could go, where God dwelled, where they could go and remember God's promise to them. God is slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love. Solomon, he ruled for 40 years. He did a wonderful job. He was a great king, but unfortunately, Solomon was not followed by all great kings. And so I'll tell you more about some of those kings in our next story.